This is our section on land theory. Now, while it may start as a section on land theory, everything we're doing talks about the relationship between parties, rights and land, so we can't really just talk about things completely on their own. We do need to bring in a rights element. So primary rights frame the whole titling system that we're working towards, the ownership element of it. So rights in land with a legal owner are called primary real rights, and these primary real rights become titles in the land register. You may find that the jurisdiction that you're in allows other things to become titles too. So you can see that occur for things like long-term leases. Long-term leases in many jurisdictions are allowed to become titles, but your jurisdiction will frame that relationship. The principal ownership right, that solum, land, freehold, is conceptually a container for other rights. So once you own the land, you have a right to do many things. And that principal ownership right, the solum, land, freehold, can contain other primary real rights. And in Scotland, these are called separate tenements. These rights can be separated from principal ownership using legal tools. So either through conveyancing, so that's normally the extraction of strata rights or mineral rights, or through statute, and this is laws to legally abstract the ownership of some specific rights. So coal, gold, petrochem seem to be the general ones which are extracted in that way. So we have our primary rights of ownership. Here again, we saw that in the right side of it, we have our principal land, and we can have legal statutes which deal with abstraction at a legal level, or you can have more flexibility come from conventional separation using conveyancing techniques, and that will pull out things like strata and mineral, for example. The general representation of these ownership rights for Scotland in particular here is your principal right is a conceptually represents a 3D element, but you can physically render it in 2D. Now, because of the way that your principal right is essentially this rubber sheet that covers your whole surface, the interface between substrata and above ground strata, you could treat that as a two-dimensional topology. However, when you start to talk about minerals or strata or other such things, you start to deal with things that are conceptually 3D. And how do we represent those things in 3D? Is it, do we use 2D in the verbalization? Do we have it as full 3D? All of those decisions start to bring an overhead into how we manage the register. And so we're starting here to think about not just what the right is, but that kind of spatial representation of that right. So let's get back to this slide from the center of the earth through to the skies. We're seeing, that we have our principal land and our ability to, conceptually abstract separate tenements from it, be it for substrata or strata or for other purposes. So how are we pulling out our conventional separate tenements? So conventional separate tenements are mainly strata and minerals. These are separated out using our TUPA, transfer of ownership part right primitives from the cadastral unit. So we have our before instance of our principal land and its three-dimensional conceptualization, where we then describe what we're going to remove from it, and we get our after removal where we have a whole that is retained in our principal land, which represents the separated strata relationship. Okay, so let's have a look at how that works with the exclusive ownership of pertinence later on.